Now, this summer we've been taking a look at people who create something special using age-old skills. They are helping to keep traditional methods of making things alive in a digital and high-tech world. They are the makers. And tonight we're taking to the water to enjoy the ancient art of coracle building. Our reporter Lewis Rhys-Jones is in a very special place, famous for its hand-built, canvas-covered little wooden boats. Lewis.
Good evening, John. Yes, well, if you're hoping to see me in a coracle on the water itself, we're sort of halfway there. We're not in the water this evening as the conditions are a little bit choppy and risky behind me, but we are live on the banks of the River Towy, where these quirky coracles have been common sight here for over 2,000 years, which predates the Romans. But there's a small community down here that are keen to keep this tradition alive and keep on making these traditional looking coracles. Keeping his family's 300-year-old tradition alive, Malcolm Rees is in his element making coracles in this workshop, a skill he's inherited from his father and great-grandfather.
My great-granddad, he was born in 1876, died in 1974. So he was 98 when he died. And he was like the master, really, that taught my father and my uncle, who then have sort of passed it on to me. It was something that I grew up with. I had no active involvement in it. I just was the annoying little kid that was watching my father and my uncle. When I was like late 30s, my father was getting on. I thought, well, it's time now. I need to pick up the baton, really, and learn from him while he's still here. When I was like late 30s, early 40s, that's when I became, I would say, a coracle maker, where I made my first coracle. And of course now, it's like everything, the more you do, the better you get.
Malcolm sources recycled or repurposed wood from local businesses to construct his coracles. Here he demonstrates the old practice of interweaving thin wooden rods to create the frame of a coracle. But it's not always plain sailing.
Some of them are hard. You go and bend one and it snaps. And then you've got to pull it out, put it back in. I've had them before now. Every stick is broken, you know.
It must be a frustrating process.
It is.
So what we've got here now, you can see the shape or the base of it coming together, and it becomes this eventually then.
You can see the structure of it. Essentially what happens is that every lath is bent into shape, and then we put another lath, 3 laths actually, as a gunnel. But on this one, as I said, we're probably going to do a willow plait so that it finishes it off.
It wasn't long before I had a shot at going out on a coracle. But a strong current and health and safety rules meant Malcolm was on hand to make sure we didn't drift downstream. During the 18th and 19th century, coracle fishing was the main source of income for poorer families living along the banks of the River Towy. Back then, you could expect to see around 200 coracles on the water. But by today, only 8 licences remain.
Back then, hundreds of years ago, Carmarthen was the biggest port in Wales. It would import and export to all places around the world. And it's estimated that about 2,500 people gained their earnings from working along the river, whether it was in the warehouses, boat builders, you know, and the coracle people. When Carmarthen sort of welcomed the railway, that changed it all for the port. And that's where we saw sort of the decline of, you know, river activity. But when you look back at the important history that Carmarthen's had, the only one thing that has remained on the river is the coracle.
With a long history spanning thousands of years, it's thanks to makers like Malcolm that the coracle continues to have an important presence in West Wales. Well, it was great to see the old traditions kept alive down here in Carmarthen. And while most of these are made out of fiberglass moulds nowadays, it's great to see that we still make them the good old-fashioned way. Fishing season for the coracles has officially finished now, so we won't be seeing as many of them down in Carmarthen in the months ahead. But people were having a go along the river for the River Festival on the weekend. So, John, while the design of these hasn't changed it much in 2,000 years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Couldn't agree more. And the nation is disappointed not to see you on the water tonight, Lewis. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. He's got form on the water.